Welcome back. Well, research shows that there are a lot of factors in what may be contributing to irritable bowel syndrome. Obviously, what you put into your body will affect how it is digested. Here to talk about IBS triggers is nutritionist Rena Rosenberg. Thank you so much for being here.
Pleasure.
When someone comes to you with IBS and says, you know, I'm trying to take some control over what I put into my body to at least try to control this illness, what is it you tell them to do?
Well, one of the first things we advise is for the person to eat smaller meals more frequently rather than larger meals at one sitting. It just allows the individual to digest the food and for the body to absorb the nutrients that we're giving it.
I'm thinking as well about a vegetarian diet. Suzanne, you're a vegetarian, but you say not because of...
Not because of IBS.
But does a vegetarian diet make it easier for someone to digest food and to have no problems with digestion?
Well, certainly vegetarians have an easier time digesting food in general because it doesn't require the body that much energy to digest vegetable source foods as opposed to a meat source food. But certainly if eaten in a small enough amount, a body can digest a meat source.
And one of the difficult things to talk about is the triggers, because I guess it would vary from person to person. What are some of the triggers, the traditional triggers with IBS?
Traditionally, dairy products, even in a person who is not lactose intolerant, are hard to digest for someone with irritable bowel syndrome. Other common triggers are alcohol, fatty foods.
Suzanne's feeling nervous because she was bragging in the break how she can eat anything she wants, including going out with her friends and drinking and all the rest of it. It doesn't affect you.
It doesn't. The greasy foods do affect me, and I try and limit them. I don't eat a lot of fast food. So in that sense, I guess, yeah, greasy foods do affect me, but alcohol used to affect me. It doesn't anymore.
She's probably making up for lost time.
What we're seeing here is the power of therapy. Suzanne's been under Rena's care, and the relationship there in terms of diet management and support obviously has worked very well in this particular situation.
Jeff, you're not crazy about the term trigger when it comes to food.
Right. What I've found in the discussions that I've had with many people are there are some foods that bother some people, and there are other foods that bother other people, and sometimes they crisscross and they conflict with each other. And so I don't necessarily recommend a particular diet, although I do recommend some of the foods that do tend to stimulate the gut. And those are, you know, fatty foods, alcohol. Alcohol is irritating more so than stimulating. I've also found that high fructose and glucose combinations can also irritate the gut, and it tends to produce a lot of gas and problems for people with diarrhea. I'm not so sure about with constipation, though, with glucose and fructose.
Is it an issue, though, when you're trying to get enough fiber in your body? You must be terrified when you're being told to put X amount of fiber into your body from the Canada Food Guide, knowing that fiber is not necessarily what you need.
Well, that's true, and that has been kind of the mainstay of family doctors and gastroenterologists for years in treating IBS. It is to increase the amount of fiber, and a lot of patients complain that the fiber bothers them, producing a lot of gas. People with diarrhea are worried about adding fiber to their diet because they think it's going to increase their diarrhea. And people with constipation, sometimes if you add too much fiber to your diet, can actually complicate the constipation that they have. But what I found is that a good amount of fiber does actually benefit both diarrhea and constipation irritable bowel syndrome sufferers. Again, there's different levels of IBS. There's mild cases and there's more severe cases. In the milder cases, where the problem doesn't really interfere with their lives, fiber can be very beneficial.
Dr. Cohen, you don't like carbs for people who have IBS.
Well, I think what we're hearing here is we need balance. I think that's critical. A balanced diet, a balanced amount of carbohydrates. But carbohydrates are risky for many people. And again, I want to say everyone's unique. Everyone has to have their unique diet plan, their unique therapy plan, their unique drug plan. But with regard to carbohydrates, it's a great source of gas production in many patients. And we heard about lactose intolerance. There are a number of other vegetable carbohydrate intolerances that lead to gas and bloating and pain. So again, under the counseling of a dietitian or with one's own experimentation, carbohydrates, fats are very important issues to look at in the diet.
Rena, when you're mapping out someone's diet for them, how much success do you see in terms of they've been doing the diet for 4 months? Do they notice a marked difference in the way that they're feeling?
Absolutely, and it all stems from, we start with a very bland diet, very, very basic foods, and every day we introduce a new food, and we are able to determine if that food triggers a symptom. And if it does, we simply stay away from it. If the food is tolerated, then we allow it to be sustained in that diet. And it's basically trial and error. And not only is it the type of food, but quite often we find it's the amount of a certain food that a person can tolerate. So, for example, some people cannot live without coffee, right, Suzanne?
Right.
And
so let's see, fatty foods, alcohol, and coffee now we've already learned in the first few minutes of the show.
but for me, a lot of people said dairy products was a big thing to avoid. Now, the only dairy products I ever consumed was milk in my coffee, and I ate yogurt and the occasional